are back! I had awesome 7 days of doing nothing, but now we're back in business. Which means more stories, theories and news. I wanted to start with Soraka this year, but Riot is already teasing the next champion. And because I really don't want to be late with a theory, we have to do it now. So, in this video we will start with a story called Demacian Heart. It's a story that might be connected to the next champion, so it is important to cover it first. But right after that we will dive into the teaser images. If there are timestamps, they will be on your screens right now. Just keep in mind that the story you will hear now is just a TLDR version. It is still better to read the full story. It's not that long and it will hook you in easily. So, without further ado, let's get on it. The story takes us south of Demacia, right into the contested territories in the mountains, very early in the morning. There, 3 Demacians, 2 veteran soldiers and a boy, were on a mission. The boy kept getting distracted by things such as Dormis root, a flower that grew over the snow. And Venice, the oldest of them, was getting impatient. Marcino was the younger soldier. He, on the other hand, smiled at the boy and let him pluck the flower. The 3 Demacians stood watch near the hill folks village, but when they couldn't see what they were looking for from a distance, Venice ordered Marcino to light a torch. It didn't take long and a dozen men and women marched from the village and towards the light. They were armed with pikes and axes. As the enemy approached, the boy got increasingly more nervous until the crowd stopped at the edge of the field before them. An old woman stepped from behind the crowd. She called the Demacian group Mage Seekers, which is a brand new term to us. You see, these Demacians were unlike the others. They wore blue cloaks and half masks of hammered bronze, and everyone in the great city bowed before them, but not the wild folk. And that's what made the boy nervous. Just a lore side note, the capital city of Demacia is actually called the Great City of Demacia. A conversation began between the two sides, and we learned that the Dormis root that grew all around them was very rare at this time of year. The old woman said that the wild folk are good farmers, but Venice knew none of the wild folk could even work a plow, let alone manage this much Dormis root. That's when Venice pulled the grey mark from his cloak and put it next to the flowers. The grey mark is a stone disc infused with petricite. It's a mage hunter's tool, and sure enough, the flowers wilted and shriveled. It was obvious that some form of magecraft was present. Marcino didn't want to battle, and he understood that the hill folk have always honored the ways of Demacia, and he simply asked the villagers to do so again. He only wanted the afflicted to step out of the crowd, but when no one moved, Marcino announced that they have a boy that will seek out the guilty. Suddenly, the crowd got skeptical. Somehow the boy could evoke magic, but not them. Marcino only said that the boy works in service to Demacia before he let him do his job. The boy looked at the crowd of hillfolk, and sure enough, there was one person that pulsed with bright light. No one could see this light, however. No one but the boy. This was his gift, and his affliction. Every village hated the boy for it. Everyone but the old woman. Her eyes pleaded with the boy not to say anything. A while passed and the boy was hesitant to say who it is. But when Marcino finally encouraged the boy to speak up, the old woman shouted at the boy not to say anything, and she added that she'll accept it. At that point, Venice had enough. He stepped forward with grey mark in his hand. A short battle erupted and we learned that the old woman wasn't the mage. It was her son who wielded thorn magic in battle. In the end, Marcino set the mage on fire with his torch in self-defense, which engraved a horrible memory in the boy's head. It took him a while before the boy snapped away from the screaming man burning alive and back into reality. But the reality wasn't any better. The flames quickly spread to the surrounding field and the mage seekers had to retreat. The next scene takes place in the evening of the same day. They rode for as long as they could to put as much distance between them and the hillfolk. But still, it would take 3 days to get back to Castle Renwall. Venice and Marcino were asleep while the boy took the first watch. Here we learned that the boy comes from a crowded city called Dragborn, and that he was able to leave that place only because of the Mage Seekers. But while the image of the mage burning alive still tainted his memory, he also remembered the beautiful places he witnessed in the few months he's been with the Mage Seekers. It was strange when he realized that it was magic that made all of this possible. This affliction that once filled him with fear was now a gift. It allowed him to walk as a true Demacian, and even wear the blue. And one day he might even have the half mask and the grey mark. These thoughts quickly faded away when Venice approached the boy in the middle of the night. He wanted to ask the boy what was wrong and why he hesitated that day, but the conversation was quickly interrupted by Marcino, who was violently twitching in his sleep. When he didn't wake up even after the boy shook him, Venice rolled Marcino over to reveal that his eyes were empty white, and his arm was riddled with dark tendrils. His flesh was corrupted right where the mage struck him during their earlier battle. In the boy's eyes, the wound bloomed with radiance. The scene then switches back to riding on horses. Venice managed to secure Marcino to his horse and rode with him, while the boy tried to keep up on his pony. It was still over a day's ride to Renwall, and throughout their journey, Venice kept scowling at the boy. To cut half a day from their travels, they decided to ride through a dangerous mountain pass. But while they were up there, Marcino fell from his horse and hit his forehead. With a strip from the boy's cloak and a little bit of water, Venice stabilized the bloodied wound, but they were still a long way from help. Venice then took the boy's Dormis route, the one he picked before the encounter with the hillfolk, and the boy realized what was really happening with Venice. The boy hesitated and his friend paid the price. They were in this situation because of the boy. Venice then placed the Dormis root into Marcino's mouth, despite the fact that it was altered with magic, because it would ease the pain. This short stop took another turn, however, when the boy noticed plumes of dark smoke rising in the distance. When they got closer to the source of the smoke, they saw smoldering husks around them, with the smell of burnt animal flesh in the air. There was a small farm nearby with a single man armed with a halberd protecting his property. The boy immediately asked the man for help, but the farmer mentioned that there are healers at Renwall, but Marcino would likely not make it. He then mentioned a beast that is currently roaming these lands, and that it's not safe to ride through here. The boy looked around but he couldn't see anything, despite him feeling that something must be near. At that distance it must be a massive creature, he thought, probably a dragon. While the farmer didn't want to help the Mage Seekers at first, simply because he didn't see the Mage Seekers as true Demacians, Venice recognized the farmer's weapon as a halberd from Thornwall, a place the two soldiers served at together. He also promised the farmer that if he helps them they would later hunt down the beast after they are done. After that, the farmer invited them to his home. Inside, the three Demacians secured Marcino to the table. The boy tried to secure his legs by laying on them, but Marcino managed to kick the boy away and crack his jaw. Meanwhile, Venice was preparing his blade to cut the corruption out. It was now spreading to Marcino's neck and heart. The farmer now secured the legs, so the boy had time to talk to Marcino, his eyes now turning from clear white to deep red. They told Marcino that they are at Renwall and that the healers are working on him, but all Marcino cared about was telling everyone that it wasn't the boy's fault. And in the end, even Venice agreed that it was just bad luck. The boy then put the handle of his dagger into Marcino's mouth, getting him ready for the pain to come. But Venice didn't even start with the cutting before they realized that the corruption was already too deep. They simply couldn't do anything. There were no medicinos in this house and burning it out was impossible at this stage. It took a while, but in the end, Venice whispered that a healer would help, but not an alchemist. He meant magic. It was a desperate thought he quickly dismissed before he got back to thinking. His last idea was to cut out the source of the corruption and burn out the rest with a powder used to treat animals. Something the farmer clearly had to treat his livestock. It was in the barn, so the boy ran out to get it. On his way there, the boy couldn't shake the feeling that something else was present, despite the fact that he couldn't see any magic nearby. But when he finally managed to get inside the barn, that's when he saw the light shining brighter and brighter, until it was blinding him. The light finally dimmed a little bit when the words Papa broke the present humming sound. The light was in fact a little girl looking for her father. In this scene we learned that the boy's name is Silas. The girl wanted Silas to take her to her father. She was very kind and afraid. But Silas explained the entire situation to the girl. Her father was in the main hut helping his friend, but the friend was a mage seeker that would likely hurt the girl, so the boy asked her to stay hidden until they leave. When the girl asked Silas if he was also a mage seeker, he simply answered, no, he is just like her. The girl then showed Silas where the lunar powder was in the barn. When Silas got back into the main hut, Venice was staring at Marcino's lifeless body. The old farmer gave the boy the same look all the others did when they tried to hide their affliction. He then looked at Venice and slowly reached for his halberd. But the boy stopped him with a reassuring smile and a shake of his head. The boy wouldn't say anything. This made the farmer let the weapon rest against the wall. There was a moment of awkward silence before Venice spoke again. He explained to the farmer that they were here because of the boy. Then he asked the farmer if they should hunt the beast together. But the farmer refused, telling him that he'll manage alone. Immediately after that answer, Venice rushed to the farmer and slammed him against the wall, with a knife ready at his throat. Venice noticed the small bed for a child, and an extra set of wooden bowls and spoons, and even the practice sword too small for a grown man. Venice knew the farmer was hiding someone. But the farmer answered that it was his daughter's and that she died last winter. But Venice didn't believe that. He believed that if they searched the farm, they would find her. The boy wanted to leave them be, but Venice reminded Silas that Marcino died because of a mage. They are mage seekers. They keep the order. They uphold the law. In the next scene, Venice pushed the boy and the farmer outside. He demanded the farmer called his daughter, but he refused. It didn't take long and Venice used his staff to mercilessly beat the farmer. But even that didn't push him into talking. When even brute force didn't work, Venice shouted that they've got her father. Words that eventually made the girl come out of the barn. No one but the boy saw the beauty that surrounded her, however. In his eyes, the girl was a living rainbow, a gorgeous being of magical nature. He couldn't betray that. He told Venice that she's normal, but once again, that's not what Venice believed. He pulled out the grey mark and began the trial. The farmer tried to stop him, but after a short struggle, Venice cracked the man's head open. That's when fear enveloped the girl and sparks of lightning crackled from her hands. Venice tried to capture it with Greymark, but the power was so overwhelming the stone disc darkened and cracked. Venice got close enough to land a killing blow on the girl, but the boy wouldn't allow that. In an attempt to save her life, the boy threw himself between Venice and the girl. At the slightest touch of the little mage, Silas's fingertips blistered, but a twisting arc of lightning pierced his hand, and the world seemingly stopped for a moment. In a split of a second he could feel his heart stop, and all the air inside him left his body. But a moment later, the lightning jolted him a new life. But this time, the blaze inside him flared hotter until he could no longer contain it inside. Light erupted from his hands and the world disappeared. When Silas opened his eyes again, 3 smoldering husks laid around him. This image now freshly burnt into his mind, ensured he knew he couldn't return to Demacia. There is nothing he could say to save himself, because in Demacia, the law must be upheld. That's the TLDR version of the Demacian heart story. There was a lot of clever references all over the place. I love the fact that if you read the story for a second time, a lot of the mysterious parts fit together like a big puzzle. For example, there never was a dragon. The burned animals came from the girl's powers. But it was interesting to see what the farmer did to disguise it as a dragon's work. The only mystery we have yet to solve is what happens to Silas now. From what I understand, he can absorb magic. That's how I interpret the encounter. So we have to figure out how does he tie to the teaser that Riot just released. And now we get into the theories. Riot rarely releases a story that has nothing to do with the champions we know. In fact, the City of Iron and Glass might be the only story. But even that had references to Warwick and Victor. So I think it is safe to assume that Silas will either return as a supporting character for a champion, or as a champion on his own. Now, there is no doubt in my mind that the new teaser images are tied to the roadmap teaser. You can immediately notice that the chains are exactly the same. Which at first led me to believe that this probably isn't Silas, because the figure looks like a woman. At least I see high heels in the shadow. But as I dug deeper into the teasers, I realized that it doesn't matter. In the new teaser images we have Lux, Jarvan, Galio and Garen. All are bound by the same chains, and all of them are doing the same thing. If you look closer, they are using their ultimates against their will. Something the new champion will probably do. Lux is casting her ultimate to destroy her city, Galio is falling onto Demacia to destroy it, Garen is executing one of his soldiers, and then there is Jarvan. Right now it is unclear whether this is Jarvan III or Jarvan IV, which means that either the father killed his son or the son killed his father. The interesting thing is that Jarvan's spear is being vaporized Thanos style, which makes me think that Jarvan IV dies here. But then again, maybe the entire Light Shield dynasty wields the same spear. What's interesting on top of this is that we've been expecting a Jarvan rework for a while now. That's simply because on the map of Runeterra you can see what Prince Jarvan really looks like in the story. So it's not impossible to see Jarvan III dying and Prince Jarvan becoming the king. But also remember that these are called visions of Demacia. Maybe none of this is actually tied to the story. Maybe these are just dreams or visions. Or we are getting a really cool story twist. Now, all of these chains don't directly tie to Silas, but there is one overlooked detail that does. All of these images are black and white, with only the magical items glowing. This is exactly how Silas sees the world. Everything that's magical glows. Here you can see a beam of light, but also a faint glow around Lux. Here you can see that only Galio is illuminating the surroundings. Garen isn't glowing, but the execution is still happening, which is a weird reference to the fact that Riot keeps confirming that Garen isn't a mage, but his ultimate is still somehow magical. Maybe he's calling for magical artillery instead, but that sounds like we'd be stretching it. And then you have Jarvan. He is sitting on the throne without a hint of magic in him, but the weapon seems to be infused with magic, and of course you can see Cataclysm around it. This is possible because Dragonfire might have been involved in forging of that weapon, but that is a theory on its own. What's also interesting is that whoever is forcing these characters to casting their abilities, be it Silas or someone else, they are revealing the mages inside Demacia. They are showing Demacia citizens that mages live among them. And that is something that Silas would do. He would show everyone that magic is present everywhere. But this brings me back to the original teaser. This doesn't have to be Silas, because just like the other champions, they are controlled by the chains. So this one may be Lux, Fiora or any other Demacian. The final note I want to leave you with is that if Silas becomes the next champion, it is likely that the story you have just heard is a setup from the past. During the story of Jarvan and Shyvana, Renwall fights back a massive dragon. I feel like if that already happened, it would have been at least mentioned here. Also, during the same dragon story, we also learned that part of Renwall is in ruins. And that also wasn't mentioned at all. It could be nitpicking, but if it is all true, then the chains can be explained later. Maybe he is like the old Lux, where he could easily mimic the spells of others, which means that maybe we will get Silas in his adult life. Hey, did you know that we have social media and Twitch where we talk about other League facts and stories? And did you know that we have neat mugs and shirts too? The links to all of that will be below. And as always, thank you, come again.